Music from the Ashes, Act I. December 1941. Terezin, Czechoslovakia. The fortress town sits 40 miles north of Prague, built centuries ago to withstand siege warfare. Massive brick walls, underground tunnels, barracks designed for thousands of soldiers. Now it has a new purpose. The Nazis have transformed it into Theresienstadt, a transit camp for Jews. They call it a ghetto, a temporary holding place. But everyone knows the truth. Theresienstadt is a waiting room for death. From here, trains depart east, toward Auschwitz, toward Treblinka, toward the gas chambers and crematoriums that consume European Jewry like a mechanical furnace. But Theresienstadt is special, unique among the camps. The Nazis use it for propaganda. They bring Red Cross inspectors here, show them model Jewish living conditions. They film propaganda movies showing happy Jews living in their own self-governed town. It's all theater, all lies. Behind the staged scenes, people starve, disease spreads, and transports leave regularly for the death camps. But the façade requires maintenance. And maintaining the façade requires culture. Music, art, theater, lectures. The Nazis allow these things, even encourage them, because they need their Theresienstadt to appear civilized, livable, almost pleasant. Into this bizarre contradiction arrives Rafael Schächter. He's 32 years old, a pianist and conductor from Prague. Before the war, he was building a reputation, performing in concert halls, teaching students, living the life of a successful musician. Then came the occupation. Then came the restrictions. Jews forbidden from public spaces, from concerts, from teaching non-Jewish students. Then came the deportations. In November 1941, Raphael receives his summons. Report for transport to Theresienstadt. He packs what he can carry, clothes, a few books, sheet music. He leaves behind his piano, his apartment, his life. He boards the train not knowing if he'll ever return, knowing that return is unlikely, that this journey probably ends in Poland, in a camp whose name he's heard whispered but whose reality remains unimaginable. Theresienstadt shocks him. The overcrowding is immediate, overwhelming. The fortress was built for 7,000 soldiers. Now it holds 60,000 Jews. They sleep in barracks, in attics, in cellars, anywhere space exists. Families are separated. Men in one section, women in another, children in a third. The food is inadequate, starvation rations distributed once daily. Black bread, watery soup, occasionally potatoes or turnips. People waste away, their bodies consuming themselves, skin stretched over bones, eyes sunken, movements slowed by malnutrition. But music exists here. Impossibly, incredibly, music survives. Other musicians arrived before Raphael, brought their instruments, organized small concerts. The Nazis permit this, see it as useful for maintaining order, keeping the prisoners pacified. Raphael attends a concert in the first week. A quartet playing Mozart in a crowded attic, 50 people crammed together listening in silence. The music is technically imperfect, the instruments out of tune, the acoustics terrible. But it's beautiful. In this place of death and degradation, for men create beauty. They transform sound into hope, notes into resistance, music into proof that humanity endures even here, even now. Raphael decides he will conduct. Not small chamber pieces, not modest quartet performances. He will conduct something massive, something impossible, something that will require every ounce of skill and determination he possesses. He will conduct Verdi's Requiem. The Requiem Mass, one of the most demanding works in classical music. Written for full orchestra, full chorus, for solo vocalists. A piece that requires over 100 performers working in perfect coordination. A piece about death, judgment, salvation, and damnation. A piece that seems designed for this place, this moment, this reality. His friends think he's insane. The practical obstacles are insurmountable. Where will he find an orchestra? Where will he find a chorus? Where will he find the sheet music? Where will they rehearse? How will they feed performers well enough to sustain the physical demands of singing and playing? How will they maintain focus when transports leave weekly, carrying performers east, creating gaps in the ensemble that must be constantly filled? It's impossible. The entire project is madness. Rafael doesn't care. He needs this. They all need this. The music will give them purpose, structure, meaning. It will remind them they're more than prisoners, more than numbers, more than bodies waiting for transport. They're musicians. They're artists. They're human beings capable of creating something transcendent. The Nazis can take their homes, their freedom, their lives. But they cannot take this. They cannot silence music. They cannot kill the human need to create beauty even in the darkest circumstances. He begins recruiting. He speaks to every musician in the camp, searches for singers, players, anyone with musical training. He finds a violinist who taught at the Prague Conservatory. He finds a cellist who played in the Berlin Philharmonic. He finds singers from synagogue choirs, from opera houses, from amateur groups. Some are elderly, their voices worn by age and hardship. Some are young, barely trained, their potential never fully developed before deportation. He takes everyone. He'll work with what he has. The sheet music is the first major problem. He needs full orchestral scores, choral parts, solo vocal lines. These don't exist in Theresienstadt. But Rafael has one advantage, his memory. He studied the Requiem for years, performed it multiple times, knows every note, every harmony, every entrance. He begins writing from memory. He has no proper manuscript paper, so he uses whatever he can find. Scraps of brown paper, margins of books, the backs of German administrative forms. He writes with pencil stubs, with charcoal, with anything that makes marks. He reconstructs Verdi's masterpiece note by note, measure by measure, page by page. It takes weeks. His hand cramps constantly. His eyes strain in dim light. But slowly, impossibly, the Requiem emerges from his memory onto paper. Next comes instruments. The camp has some, violins, cellos, a few wind instruments brought by prisoners. But not enough. Not nearly enough for a full orchestra. Rafael improvises. He arranges parts for whatever instruments are available. He reduces orchestral sections, simplifies passages, restructures harmonies. The result won't sound like Verdi intended. But it will sound. That's enough. Rehearsals begin in January 1942. They meet in a drafty attic space, freezing cold, barely heated. Rafael gathers his volunteers, maybe 40 people initially. They're exhausted, hungry, sick. Many have coughs, the chronic lung disease that spreads through overcrowded barracks. Some have tuberculosis, dysentery, typhus. They're dying slowly, their bodies failing from malnutrition and disease. But they come to rehearsals. They sit in the cold attic, huddled in whatever clothing they have, and they sing. The sound at first is terrible. Voices weak from hunger, unable to sustain long phrases. Breathing shallow, support inadequate. The orchestra struggles too, fingers stiff from cold, instruments out of tune, ensemble coordination non-existent. Rafael listens and despairs. This won't work. They're too weak, too sick, too broken. The Requiem demands power, demands stamina, demands technical precision they cannot possibly achieve. But he continues. He breaks the music into small sections, rehearses measures repeatedly until they improve. He teaches breathing techniques to help weak singers sustain phrases. He works with instrumentalists on fingering, on bowing, on maintaining tempo despite exhaustion. He's patient, encouraging, refusing to accept defeat. Slowly, incrementally, improvement emerges. The chorus begins to blend, voices finding harmony. The orchestra develops cohesion, musicians listening to each other, adjusting, matching. The music starts sounding like music instead of noise. The rehearsals become sacred time. For a few hours each day, the performers escape their reality. They're not prisoners in a Nazi camp. They're musicians performing Verdi. The attic becomes a concert hall. The brown paper scores become professional manuscripts. They transform themselves through will and imagination, choosing to believe in the music's power to transcend their circumstances. But reality intrudes constantly. Transports east continue weekly. The Nazis post lists of deportees, names and identification numbers, instructions to report to the railway siding with luggage limited to 50 kilograms. The lists are arbitrary, selection based on bureaucratic quotas rather than logic or mercy. Anyone might be chosen. Anyone might disappear. In February, Rafael loses 6 chorus members to a transport. They attend rehearsal in the evening, sing the Dies Irae with passion and precision. The next morning, their names appear on the deportation list. By afternoon, they're gone, loaded into cattle cars heading east. Rafael must replace them, recruit new singers, teach them the parts from scratch. It's soul-crushing work, training performers knowing they might vanish before the performance, knowing every relationship is temporary, every connection inevitably severed by death or deportation. March brings more losses. The first violinist dies from typhus, burning with fever in the barracks hospital, delirious and alone. A soprano collapses during rehearsal, malnutrition causing her heart to fail, dying on the attic floor surrounded by fellow musicians who can do nothing but watch. A cellist is selected for transport, departs in tears, carrying his instrument because he cannot bear to leave it behind. The ensemble shrinks, grows, shrinks again, an organism constantly regenerating, replacing dead or departed cells with new ones, maintaining structure through continuous adaptation. Raphael himself grows weaker. The inadequate food, the constant stress, the physical demands of conducting for hours daily, all of it takes its toll. He loses weight, his clothes hanging loose, his face gaunt. He develops a persistent cough, hacking fits that leave him breathless. His hands shake, fine tremors that make conducting difficult. But he refuses to stop. The Requiem has become his reason for survival. If he stops working on it, if he abandons the project, what's left? Just waiting for the transport list, waiting for his name, waiting for the cattle car and the journey east to whatever waits there. The music keeps him alive. The music gives meaning to each day. Without it, he might as well be dead already. By April, they're ready for a performance. Not perfect, not professional by pre-war standards, but ready. The ensemble has achieved something remarkable. 150 performers, orchestra and chorus combined, capable of executing Verdi's Requiem with competence and passion. The voices are weak, the instruments barely adequate, the conditions impossible. But they've done it. They've created something beautiful in hell. The performance is scheduled for April 15, 1942. The location is the main hall in the Magdeburg barracks, the largest space available in Theresienstadt. The Nazi authorities approve, see it as good propaganda, proof of the camp's cultural life. They even invite SS officers, camp administrators, guests from Prague. The performance will demonstrate how well the Jews are treated here, how much freedom they enjoy, how Theresienstadt is truly a self-governing community rather than a prison. Raphael feels sick preparing for this. He's performing for his captors, entertaining the men who starve and kill his people. It's obscene. But refusing means ending the music, disbanding the ensemble, surrendering the one meaningful thing in this place. So he proceeds, hating every moment, hating himself for cooperating, hating the Nazis for forcing this choice, for transforming art into propaganda, for corrupting everything they touch. The day arrives. The performers gather early, preparing themselves physically and mentally. They've saved scraps of food, trying to build strength for the performance. They've practiced breathing exercises, vocal warm-ups, anything to compensate for their weakened condition. They're terrified. Not of performing, but of failing, of collapsing during the concert, of embarrassing themselves before their fellow prisoners and their Nazi captors. The audience arrives. Prisoners fill the hall first, packing every available space, standing in aisles, sitting on the floor. They're desperate for this, for beauty, for transcendence, for proof that humanity survives. Then the Nazis enter, SS officers in crisp uniforms, administrators in civilian clothes, guests from Prague curious about this unusual camp. They sit in reserved seats at the front, smoking cigarettes, chatting casually, treating the concert as entertainment, as diversion from their duties. Rafael stands before the ensemble, his back to the audience, facing his musicians. He raises his hands. Silence falls. Every eye watches him. The moment stretches, suspended, pregnant with possibility. Then his hands move, and the Requiem begins. The orchestra plays the opening notes, quiet, somber, establishing the mood. Then the chorus enters, their voices joining in the ancient Latin text, Requiem aeternam dona eis, Domini. Grant them eternal rest, O Lord. The words are prayer, our plea, our prophecy. These performers are singing their own funeral mass, requesting peace for themselves and their murdered families, acknowledging death's inevitability while asserting that beauty and meaning persist even in death's shadow. The music swells, grows, builds through the Kyrie into the Dies Irae, the day of wrath, the apocalyptic vision of judgment and destruction. The chorus attacks the text with ferocity, their weak voices somehow finding power, channeling rage and grief and terror into Verdi's notes. Dies Irae, dies illa, solvet seclum in favela. Day of wrath, that day will dissolve the world in ashes. The prophecy feels literal here, feels like description rather than metaphor. The world has dissolved into ashes. Europe burns. Millions die. The apocalypse is now, is here, is real. The performance continues through the Requiem's movements, each section demanding different emotions, different energies. The Recordare, tender and pleading, asking for mercy. The Confutatus, dramatic and terrifying, contrasting the blessed and the damned. The Lacrimosa, heartbreaking and beautiful, weeping for the dead. The performers give everything, pouring every remaining ounce of strength into the music, singing and playing as if their lives depend on it, as if the music itself might save them. Raphael conducts in a trance, barely conscious of the audience, focused entirely on the ensemble, guiding them through the complex score, holding them together, maintaining unity despite exhaustion and emotion. His hands move mechanically, muscle memory executing gestures he's practiced 10,000 times. But his mind is elsewhere, transcending the physical moment, existing in the music itself, in Verdi's notes, in the Latin text, in the eternal human cry for mercy and meaning in the face of death. The final movement, the Libera Me, liberation from death, deliverance from evil. The soprano soloist, a woman named Marietta Capper, stands to sing. Her voice is thin, worn by hunger, but it carries truth, carries desperate hope. Libera me, Domini, de mort aeterna. Deliver me, Lord, from eternal death. The prayer is both personal and collective, individual and universal. Deliver me, deliver us, deliver all who suffer here, all who die here, all who will die in the camps to come. The music builds to its final climax, orchestra and chorus united, voices crying out together, then resolving into quiet acceptance, peaceful resignation, the final amen fading into silence. The performance ends. For a moment, nothing happens. The hall is completely silent, hundreds of people frozen, unable to move or speak. Then someone begins clapping. Then another. Then everyone, the entire audience rising, applauding, some weeping openly, others standing in stunned silence, processing what they've just experienced. The prisoners know they've witnessed something transcendent, something that transformed their suffering into art, their pain into beauty. They've been reminded that they're human, that culture and civilization persist even here, that the Nazis can imprison their bodies but cannot touch their souls. The Nazi officers applaud politely, uncomfortable, unsure how to respond. They came expecting entertainment, a pleasant diversion. Instead, they've been confronted with something profound, something that challenges their fundamental assumptions about the people they're murdering. These aren't subhumans. These are artists, musicians, human beings capable of performing one of Western civilization's greatest masterpieces under unimaginable conditions. The cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable, threatening. Better to ignore it, to dismiss the performance as anomaly, to continue believing the propaganda that justifies genocide. Rafael collapses afterward, physically and emotionally exhausted. He's given everything, left nothing in reserve. His musicians surround him, supporting him, celebrating together, sharing this moment of triumph. They've done the impossible. They've performed Verdi's Requiem in Theresienstadt. They've proven that music survives, that beauty endures, that humanity persists. For one night, they weren't prisoners. They were artists. And no one can take that from them. No one can erase what they've created here. The music happened. The beauty was real. And that matters. That means everything. Music from the Ashes, Act 2. May 1942. The Requiem's success creates unexpected consequences. Word spreads beyond Theresienstadt. The Nazi propaganda machine seizes on it, uses it as evidence of the camp's cultural sophistication. Articles appear in Prague newspapers describing the model ghetto, where Jews conduct orchestras and perform classical music. The Red Cross receives reports of cultural activities. The lie grows stronger, more elaborate, more dangerous. And Rafael Schächter finds himself trapped in a moral nightmare. His music, his art, his attempt to preserve humanity in hell, has been weaponized by his captors. The Nazis use his Requiem to prove that their Theresienstadt is humane, livable, acceptable. Every note he conducts becomes propaganda justifying genocide. He considers stopping. Disbanding the ensemble. Refusing to perform again. But the alternative is worse. Without the music, what remains? Just starvation, disease, transports east. The music is the only thing giving these people purpose, meaning, hope. He can't destroy that. He can't take away the one beautiful thing in their lives. So he continues, hating himself, hating the Nazis, hating the impossible choice they've forced upon him. The ensemble continues rehearsing. They work on refining the Requiem, improving sections that felt weak during the first performance, strengthening entrances, cleaning up ensemble coordination. But the membership keeps changing. More transports leave. More musicians disappear. In June, Rafael loses his concertmaster, the first violinist who anchored the entire string section. The man's name appears on the deportation list on Monday. By Friday, he's gone, shipped east to Auschwitz. Rafael must find a replacement, train them quickly, maintain continuity while the ensemble constantly dissolves and reforms around him. New arrivals bring new talent. In July, a renowned cellist from Vienna arrives, deported with his family. Rafael recruits him immediately, strengthens the orchestra's foundation. In August, a soprano from the Berlin State Opera arrives, her voice stronger than anyone else in the ensemble. She becomes the soloist for the Labourmi, replacing Marietta Capper, who was transported in late June. Every loss is replaced, every gap filled, but the emotional cost is staggering. Rafael forms relationships with these musicians, works intimately with them, learns their quirks and strengths. Then they vanish, shipped east, probably dead within days. He must grieve briefly, then move on, recruit replacements, start over. The cycle is endless, exhausting, soul-destroying. The second performance happens in September 1942. The audience is larger this time, more Nazi officials, more visitors from Prague. The propaganda value has increased. Their Theresienstadt is being prepared for a Red Cross inspection, scheduled for sometime in 1943. The Nazis want to demonstrate culture, normalcy, humane treatment. The Requiem fits perfectly. Rafael conducts again, his movements mechanical now, practiced, perfected through repetition. The performance is technically better than the first, the ensemble more cohesive, the interpretation more refined. But Raphael feels nothing. He's conducting in a fog, disconnected from the music, unable to access the emotional core that made the first performance transcendent. He's become an automaton, performing because stopping means surrender, but finding no joy, no meaning, no redemption in the act. The audience responds enthusiastically again. The prisoners weep and applaud. The Nazis smile and congratulate themselves on maintaining such excellent conditions. Raphael wants to scream at them, to tell them the truth, to expose the lie. But he stays silent. What choice does he have? Speaking truth means death. Silence means complicity. There are no good options, only survival and compromise and guilt. Autumn 1942 brings new horrors. The transports increase in frequency. 2 per week now, sometimes 3. The camp's population fluctuates wildly, thousands departing, thousands arriving, a continuous churn of humanity flowing through Theresienstadt toward extermination in the east. The death rate inside the camp increases too. Overcrowding worsens. Food rations decrease. Disease spreads faster. The hospital overflows with typhus patients, dysentery patients, tuberculosis patients. The elderly die in huge numbers, their bodies stacked in the courtyard waiting for cremation. Raphael's ensemble shrinks dramatically. He loses half the chorus in October alone, transported or dead. He must rebuild from scratch, recruiting new singers, teaching them the Latin text, drilling the difficult passages. It's Sisyphean labor, endless repetition, constant rebuilding, never achieving stability because stability is impossible here. Everyone is temporary. Everyone is dying or waiting to die. The music is the only constant, the only thing that persists through the chaos. In November, something unexpected happens. A transport arrives from Prague carrying a piano. An actual piano, a full-size upright, somehow included in someone's allotted luggage. Raphael hears about it immediately, rushes to see it, can't believe it's real. He hasn't touched a piano in over a year, hasn't felt keys beneath his fingers, hasn't created sound directly rather than through conducting. The piano is battered, out of tune, damaged from transport. But it works. It makes sound. It's the most beautiful thing Raphael has seen in months. He begins practicing daily, escaping into the piano whenever possible. He plays Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, anything he can remember. The muscle memory returns quickly, fingers finding familiar patterns, executing passages he learned decades ago. The music becomes therapy, meditation, a way to process trauma without words. He plays for himself initially, alone in a storage room where the piano is kept. But word spreads. People come to listen, crowding the doorway, sitting on the floor, absorbing the sound. Raphael plays for them, giving them moments of beauty, of normalcy, of connection to the world they lost. He starts giving informal concerts, piano recitals for whoever wants to attend. The audiences are large, desperate for any cultural experience, any reminder of civilized life. Raphael plays Chopin nocturnes, Schumann fantasies, Liszt rhapsodies. The technical demands are impossible on this damaged instrument, but he manages, adapting fingering, compensating for stuck keys and broken hammers. The music is imperfect but powerful, touching something deep in the listeners, reminding them of concerts in Prague and Vienna and Berlin, of lives where they attended performances in elegant halls, dressed formally, discussed interpretations over dinner afterward. Those lives are gone, erased, but the music remains. The notes are the same. The beauty is unchanged. That continuity matters desperately. December 1942. Winter arrives with brutal cold. The barracks are barely heated, fuel desperately scarce. People freeze at night, huddled together for warmth, waking with frostbite on fingers and toes. Rehearsals become torture, musicians sitting in the unheated attic wearing every piece of clothing they own, fingers too numb to play properly, voices weak from cold and hunger. Rafael pushes them anyway, maintains the schedule, refuses to let winter stop the music. They need this more than ever now. The worse conditions become, the more important the music is. It's the only thing separating them from animals, the only proof that they retain dignity and humanity despite everything the Nazis do to degrade them. The third Requiem performance is scheduled for January 1943, marking 1 year since Rafael began the project. The ensemble has been completely replaced twice over. Only Rafael and perhaps 10 others remain from the original group. Everyone else is dead or transported or arrived recently. Yet the music continues, passed from generation to generation of prisoners, maintained through continuous teaching and rehearsal. It's become larger than any individual performer. It's become a symbol, a tradition, a sacred ritual that must be preserved regardless of cost. The January performance is the coldest yet. The hall is freezing, the audience wrapped in blankets, breath visible in clouds. The musicians wear gloves with fingers cut off, allowing just enough dexterity to play while maintaining some warmth. The singers struggle, cold air making vocal cords tight, breathing painful. But they perform, driven by Rafael's relentless will, by collective determination to maintain beauty despite suffering. The music is ragged, imperfect, barely adequate technically. But it's defiant. It's proof that they still exist, still create, still resist through art. The Nazis can't kill this. Every performance is victory, is survival, is revenge. February brings the Red Cross inspection, the moment everything has been building toward. The Nazis transform Theresienstadt into a stage set, a Potemkin village designed to deceive international observers. They paint buildings, plant gardens, set up fake shops with goods that will disappear after inspection. They reduce the population, shipping thousands east to ease overcrowding, creating the illusion of adequate space. They establish a fake economy, print fake money, create fake newspapers. It's theater, elaborate and cynical, designed to hide mass murder behind a façade of normalcy. The cultural program is central to the deception. The Nazis want the Red Cross to see concerts, theater performances, lectures. They want to demonstrate that Jews in their Theresienstadt live cultured, civilized lives. Rafael's Requiem is scheduled as the centerpiece, the ultimate proof of the camp's sophistication. He's ordered to conduct a special performance for the Red Cross delegates, to demonstrate the camp's musical excellence. Rafael refuses. For the first time in 18 months, he openly defies Nazi orders. He will not conduct for the Red Cross. He will not participate in this obscene charade. He will not help the Nazis convince the world that their Theresienstadt is acceptable while thousands die here and millions die in camps further east. His refusal is quiet, polite, but absolute. He simply says no. He cannot do this. His conscience forbids it. He'll accept whatever punishment follows. Death, transport, torture, anything is better than this complicity. The Nazi commandant, Karl Röhm, summons him. Röhm is furious, threatens immediate transport, threatens execution, threatens collective punishment of the entire ensemble. Rafael stands firm. He will not conduct. Nothing Röhm says will change his mind. The standoff lasts hours, Röhm alternating threats and promises, Rafael refusing everything. Finally, Röhm realizes he can't force this. You cannot force art. You cannot compel genuine musical performance through threats. Either the conductor cooperates or the performance fails. And Röhm needs this performance. His superiors in Prague are watching. His career depends on the Red Cross inspection succeeding. They compromise. Rafael will conduct a performance, but not specifically for the Red Cross. It will be a regular concert, open to all prisoners, that Red Cross delegates may attend if they wish. This distinction matters to Rafael. He's not performing for the Nazis. He's performing for his fellow prisoners, as he always has. If the Red Cross happens to attend, that's circumstance, not intention. It's a thin distinction, barely meaningful, but it preserves something in Raphael's mind. He can live with this. Barely. He agrees. The performance happens in March 1943. The Red Cross delegates attend, along with Nazi officials and hundreds of prisoners. Raphael conducts his fourth Requiem, the fourth iteration with mostly new performers, the fourth time through Verdi's meditation on death and judgment. The music is stronger now, more refined, better executed. The ensemble has learned through repetition, through constant rehearsal, through surviving together. They know the Requiem intimately, can perform it almost from memory, can navigate its complexities instinctively. The Red Cross delegates watch with interest, making notes, observing the audience's reaction. They see engaged prisoners, appreciative applause, clear evidence of cultural activity. They see what the Nazis want them to see, a functioning community, adequate conditions, humane treatment. They miss the truth hiding beneath surface appearances. They don't see the starvation, the disease, the transports leaving weekly for Auschwitz. They don't understand that this cultural program exists precisely to hide those horrors. They've been successfully deceived, and Raphael knows it, hates knowing it, hates that his music contributed to the deception. After the performance, one Red Cross delegate approaches Raphael, congratulates him on the excellent performance, asks about his background and training. Raphael answers politely, mechanically, providing biographical details. The delegate asks if conditions are adequate, if the musicians have everything they need. Raphael wants to scream the truth, to expose the lies, to tell this naive Swiss bureaucrat that people are dying by thousands, that Theresienstadt is a death trap disguised as a ghetto, that everything he's seen today is theater. But he stays silent. Speaking truth means death, and his death means the music stops. As long as he lives, as long as he conducts, the ensemble continues. The music survives. That's worth preserving, even at the cost of complicity, even at the cost of his soul. Spring 1943 brings more transports, more losses, more death. The ensemble shrinks and reforms continuously. Raphael loses count of how many musicians have passed through, how many he's trained and lost, how many faces he can no longer remember. They blur together, a continuous stream of suffering humanity flowing through his life, each person temporary, disposable, forgotten. He feels himself hardening, becoming numb, disconnecting emotionally to protect himself. He can't grieve each loss anymore. There are too many. Grief has become unsustainable, so he stops feeling, stops connecting, becomes a machine focused solely on the music. In May, Raphael learns what happens to transported prisoners. A Czech Gentile railway worker, secretly sympathetic to Jews, makes contact with the camp underground. He brings reports from Poland, from Auschwitz, describing the gas chambers, the crematoriums, the industrial-scale murder. The transports don't go to labor camps. They go to death camps. Almost everyone is killed immediately upon arrival. The old, the young, the sick, straight to the gas chambers. Only the strongest are selected for labor, temporary survival until they too are worked to death or murdered. The numbers are incomprehensible. Thousands daily. Millions total. Europe's Jews are being systematically exterminated. Raphael receives this information in a state of shock, unable to process it fully. He's known abstractly that transports mean death, but confronting the concrete reality is different. Every musician he's lost, everyone whose name appeared on deportation lists, they're all dead. Murdered in gas chambers, burned in ovens, their ashes scattered across Polish fields. The weight of it is crushing, paralyzing. He's been conducting Requiem masses while the people he's conducting for are being murdered en masse. The irony is horrific, unbearable. He considers suicide. It would be easy here, simple. Stop eating, wait for disease, refuse medical treatment. Or more actively, touch the electrified fence, walk into the guard's gunfire, provoke execution. He's exhausted, traumatized, sees no point in continuing. The war will last years more. He won't survive. Eventually his name will appear on a transport list, and he'll be shipped to Auschwitz like everyone else. Why prolong the inevitable? Why continue suffering when death is certain anyway? But the music stops him. If he dies, who conducts the Requiem? Who maintains the ensemble? Who provides these people their one source of beauty and meaning? He's trapped by obligation, by responsibility to the musicians who depend on him, by the knowledge that his survival matters beyond himself. So he continues, choosing life over death, choosing obligation over escape, choosing to keep conducting even though every performance feels like collaboration, like helping the Nazis maintain their deadly fiction. Summer 1943. The fake beautification of Theresienstadt continues. The Nazis are preparing for a propaganda film, a documentary showing how well Jews live here. They need more cultural content, more concerts, more performances. Rafael is ordered to conduct the Requiem again, the 5th time, for filming. He agrees mechanically, no longer bothering to resist. What's the point? Resistance achieved nothing. Compromise achieved nothing. Everyone dies regardless. He'll conduct because that's what he does, because the music is all he has left, because stopping means admitting defeat. The filming happens in August. Nazi cameras capture the performance, recording for propaganda purposes. Rafael conducts in a daze, disconnected from the music, going through motions perfected through repetition. The performers sing and play, creating beauty mechanically, their hearts elsewhere, their minds focused on survival rather than art. The filmed performance is technically excellent, the best they've achieved. But it's soulless, empty, a corpse of music wearing the appearance of life. The Nazis are satisfied. They have their propaganda footage, their proof of their Theresienstadt's cultural sophistication. September 1943. Rafael collapses during rehearsal, his body finally surrendering to malnutrition and disease. He's carried to the hospital, diagnosed with typhus and severe malnutrition. His weight has dropped below 90 pounds, his body consuming itself, his immune system failing. The doctors tell him he needs rest, proper food, time to recover. He laughs bitterly. Rest? Food? Time? None of those things exist here. He'll either survive or die, and recovery depends more on luck than treatment. He survives, barely, through weeks of fever and delirium. His musicians visit when possible, bringing small scraps of food saved from their own meager rations, sitting beside his bed, talking about music, about rehearsals, about the next performance. They need him to survive. Without Rafael, the Requiem stops. Without the Requiem, they lose their purpose, their meaning, their hope. His survival isn't personal anymore. It's collective necessity. He must live for them, for the music, for the fragile beautiful thing they've built together in hell. October 1943. Rafael returns to rehearsals, still weak, moving slowly, his conducting less vigorous than before. But he's back. The ensemble welcomes him emotionally, their relief visible. They resume work immediately, preparing for another performance, scheduled for November. The music is their ritual now, their religion, the thing that structures time and gives meaning to suffering. As long as they rehearse, as long as they perform, they remain human. They remain artists. They remain themselves. The Nazis can destroy their bodies, but not this. Never this. The music survives, and therefore they survive, and that has to be enough. Music from the Ashes, Act 3. January 1944. Theresienstadt enters its darkest phase. The transports increase to unprecedented levels. The Nazis are liquidating ghettos across Europe, concentrating Jews in fewer locations before final deportation to Auschwitz. Theresienstadt swells beyond capacity, then empties violently as massive transports depart weekly. The population fluctuates wildly, 15,000 one week, 40,000 the next, then 20,000 the week after. The infrastructure collapses under the strain. Food becomes scarcer. Disease spreads faster. The crematorium operates continuously, smoke rising day and night, the smell of burning bodies hanging over the camp like a permanent fog. Raphael's ensemble disintegrates. In 1 week alone, he loses 30 singers, transported en masse, their entire section eliminated overnight. He tries rebuilding, recruiting replacements, but the new arrivals are in worse condition than ever before. They arrive from Polish ghettos, from Hungarian towns, already half dead from previous deportations, from months or years in other camps. They're skeletal, sick, traumatized beyond words. Many die within days of arrival. Teaching them to sing Verdi feels absurd, impossible, obscene. But Raphael continues because stopping means surrender, means admitting the Nazis have won, means accepting that beauty is dead and only horror remains. The sixth Requiem performance happens in February 1944, and it's a disaster. The ensemble is too weak, too depleted, too broken. Voices crack and fail. The orchestra struggles to maintain tempo, musicians too exhausted to sustain concentration. The performance falls apart midway through the Dies Irae, the chorus unable to execute the complex fugal passages, the coordination collapsing into chaos. Raphael stops conducting, lowers his hands, stands in silence before the ensemble. They've failed. For the first time, they cannot complete the Requiem. The music has defeated them, or rather, starvation and disease and genocide have defeated them. The music demands more than they can give. The audience sits in shocked silence. They came expecting transcendence, expecting beauty, expecting temporary escape from horror. Instead, they've witnessed failure, the visible collapse of their cultural bulwark against despair. Some weep. Others leave quietly, unable to process what this failure means. If the music dies, what remains? What separates them from animals waiting for slaughter? The Requiem was their proof of humanity's persistence. Without it, they're just bodies, just numbers, just fuel for the crematorium. Raphael dismisses the ensemble, sends everyone away, sits alone in the empty hall. He's reached his limit, the point where will and determination are insufficient, where physical reality imposes absolute constraints. You cannot sing on an empty stomach. You cannot play instruments with frostbitten fingers. You cannot create beauty when your body is dying. The Nazis have won. They've killed the music not through prohibition but through starvation, not through censorship but through genocide. The transports have finally accomplished what threats never could. They've silenced Rafael Schächter's Requiem. But 3 days later, something unexpected happens. Musicians begin returning to the attic rehearsal space. Not all of them, not even most, but some. 15, then 20, then 30. They're weak, exhausted, barely able to stand. But they come. They bring their instruments, their sheet music, their voices. They look at Raphael, waiting for him to begin, to raise his hands, to conduct. He stares at them, confused, not understanding why they're here, why they've returned after such catastrophic failure. A violinist speaks, an elderly man from Budapest who arrived 2 months ago. He says they need to try again. They need to perform the Requiem one more time. Not for the Nazis, not for propaganda, not for Red Cross inspections. For themselves. For the dead. For everyone who sang or played in previous performances and is now murdered in Auschwitz. They owe it to those people, to that memory, to complete what they started. One final performance. A true requiem, a genuine funeral mass for the murdered millions. Raphael wants to refuse. They're too weak. Another failure will destroy them completely. Better to preserve dignity by stopping now, by remembering past successes rather than courting further humiliation. But the musicians insist. They're not children requiring protection from failure. They're adults choosing to risk everything for one final attempt at beauty. If they fail, they fail. But at least they tried. At least they fought until the absolute end. Raphael agrees, against all judgment, against all reason. They begin rehearsing again, but differently now. Slowly, patiently, accepting limitations, working within constraints rather than fighting them. Rafael simplifies passages, removes impossible sections, adapts the music to match their diminished capabilities. He rewrites parts, reduces orchestration, creates a new version of the Requiem designed for dying performers in a death camp. It's not Verdi anymore, not exactly. It's something else, something new born from necessity and suffering. March 1944. The rehearsals continue despite everything, despite constant transports, despite starvation, despite death. The musicians develop a superstitious belief that as long as they rehearse, they won't be transported. It's magical thinking, irrational, but it sustains them. Every rehearsal attended is a day survived, is proof of continued existence. The music becomes their shield against death, their talisman against selection. It doesn't work, of course. Names still appear on transport lists. Musicians still disappear. But the belief persists because they need it, because without it there's only despair. Rafael himself receives a transport notice in April. His name appears on the list, scheduled for deportation in 3 days. He reads the notice calmly, almost with relief. It's over. The impossible burden of conducting, of maintaining the music, of surviving, all of it ends now. He'll board the train, travel to Auschwitz, die in the gas chambers like millions before him. At least it's certain. At least there's no more pretending, no more false hope, no more exhausting struggle. Death is simple, final, peaceful compared to this prolonged dying in Theresienstadt. His musicians learn about the transport order within hours. The camp's underground communication network spreads news instantly. They gather in the attic that evening, dozens of them, all who remain of the ensemble. They beg him to hide, to evade transport, to disappear into the camp's underground spaces where some prisoners survive for weeks avoiding selection. Rafael refuses. Hiding is temporary, postpones the inevitable, risks collective punishment if he's caught. Better to go peacefully, to accept fate, to die with whatever dignity remains. The musicians propose an alternative. One final performance. Tomorrow night. An unofficial concert, no Nazi approval, no propaganda purpose. Just the Requiem, performed one last time, Rafael's final act of conducting before deportation. It's incredibly dangerous. Unauthorized gatherings are forbidden. Discovery means immediate punishment, probably execution. But they don't care anymore. They've moved beyond fear into a space of pure defiance, choosing meaning over safety, choosing art over survival. Rafael agrees. Why not? He's dead in 3 days anyway. Might as well die conducting, might as well die making music, might as well die doing the one thing that's mattered these past 3 years. They plan the performance for the following evening, spread word through trusted networks, arrange the attic space, prepare instruments and music. It will be invitation only, limited attendance, maximum secrecy. A clandestine requiem mass in a Nazi death camp, performed by the dying for the dying, conducted by a man with 3 days left to live. The next day, April 23, 1944, passes slowly. Rafael spends it preparing mentally, saying silent goodbyes to familiar places, to the piano in the storage room, to the attic rehearsal space, to the barracks where he's slept for 30 months. He feels strange detachment, as if he's already dead, already ghost observing his own final hours. He's not afraid. Fear requires future, and he has no future. Only present remains, only these final hours, only the music waiting tonight. Evening arrives. The ensemble gathers in the attic, along with perhaps 50 audience members, carefully selected prisoners who understand the risk they're taking by attending. No Nazis know about this performance. No guards patrol nearby. It's theirs alone, private, sacred, a ceremony for themselves without propaganda or politics or institutional purpose. Just music for music's sake, art for art's sake, beauty created in darkness because creating beauty is what humans do, even in hell, even at the edge of death. Raphael stands before the ensemble one final time. His musicians watch him, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow, their bodies wasted. Their corpses who haven't stopped moving yet, dead people temporarily animated by will and music and desperate defiance. He raises his hands, holds them suspended, gathers himself. Then he begins conducting, and the Requiem starts, the seventh performance, the final performance, the true funeral mass. The music is transformed. It's ragged, imperfect, technically inadequate by any conventional standard. Voices crack, instruments stumble, ensemble coordination wavers. But something else emerges, something previous performances lacked. Truth. Raw, unfiltered, devastating truth. They're not performing about death anymore. They're performing from death, from inside it, from the experience of dying. Every note carries that knowledge, that certainty, that intimate acquaintance with mortality. The Requiem stops being art and becomes prayer, stops being performance and becomes witness, stops being music and becomes testimony. The dies irae arrives, day of wrath, day of judgment. The chorus attacks the text with ferocious intensity, pouring rage and grief and terror into Verdi's notes. Quantus tremor est futuris, quando judex est venturis. What trembling there will be, when the judge comes. But the judge has already come. The judgment is happening now. The day of wrath is today, is yesterday, is tomorrow, is every day in this camp, in this war, in this genocide. They're singing their own apocalypse, documenting it through music, leaving sonic evidence of crimes beyond words. The lacrimosa, the weeping movement, unbearably sad, unbearably beautiful. The tears aren't metaphorical now. They're real, streaming down faces, soaking the brown paper sheet music, making the handwritten notes blur and run. Everyone weeps, performers and audience together, mourning the dead, mourning the dying, mourning themselves. The music becomes collective grief expressed through organized sound, structured crying, tears transformed into art. The Libera Me, the final movement, deliverance from death. The soprano soloist, a young woman from Prague whose name Raphael can't remember, stands to sing. Her voice is thin, fragile, breaking frequently. But she sings with complete honesty, with absolute vulnerability, requesting liberation not as theological concept but as desperate plea. Libera me, Domini, de mort aeterna. Deliver me, Lord, from eternal death. Please. 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 The repetition in Verdi's music becomes mantra, becomes prayer, becomes begging. She sings directly to God, demanding explanation, demanding justice, demanding answer to the unanswerable question, why? Why this? Why us? Why such suffering? Why such evil? Why does beauty exist if horror can destroy it so easily? No answer comes. Only music. Only the orchestra supporting the soprano, only the chorus joining her prayer, only the collective sound of humans crying out together in extremity. Raphael conducts through tears, his vision blurred, his hands shaking, but maintaining the beat, holding the ensemble together, guiding them through the final pages. The music builds to its climax, the full ensemble united, voices and instruments and hearts crying out together, then resolving into the final amen, peaceful acceptance, resignation, the surrender to death that's both tragedy and mercy. The final note fades into silence. Complete silence. No one moves. No one breathes. The moment extends, suspended, eternal. Then someone begins sobbing, deep-wrenching cries from the gut. Then others join, then everyone, the entire attic filled with the sound of weeping, 50 people crying together, mourning everything they've lost, everything that's been destroyed, everyone who's died. They cry for their families, for their homes, for their murdered friends, for their own approaching deaths. They cry for 3 years of horror, for genocide beyond comprehension, for the end of their world. Raphael collapses into a chair, physically and emotionally destroyed. His musicians surround him, embrace him, hold him while he weeps. They've done it. They've performed the Requiem one final time, performed it truly, performed it as funeral mass rather than propaganda, as prayer rather than concert. It doesn't matter that no one outside this attic heard it. It doesn't matter that it won't be recorded or remembered or acknowledged by history. It happened. They created beauty in hell. They made art in the shadow of death. They proved that humanity persists even here, even now, even at the absolute end. The gathering disperses slowly, people leaving in small groups to avoid suspicion, returning to barracks, carrying the music with them, holding it inside as secret treasure, as private memory, as proof that they remained human despite everything. Rafael stays in the attic until it's empty, alone with the scattered sheet music, the abandoned instruments, the physical remnants of something transcendent that briefly existed in this space. April 25, 1944. Rafael Schächter reports for transport, carrying his small suitcase, wearing his identification number. He boards the cattle car with hundreds of others, packed so tightly they can barely move. The train departs Theresienstadt, travels east through Czechoslovakia into Poland, arrives at Auschwitz-Birkenau 36 hours later. The doors open. SS officers conduct selection on the platform. Right or left, life or death, temporary survival or immediate murder. Rafael is sent left, toward the gas chambers, along with most of the transport. He's 35 years old. He walks calmly, accepting fate, remembering music, hearing the Requiem in his mind as he enters the chamber, as the doors seal, as the Zyklon B pellets drop. The music plays in his head until consciousness fades, until thought stops, until death comes. His musicians continue in their Theresienstadt for several more months. Some survive until liberation in May 1945, when Soviet forces arrive to find 8,000 survivors, walking skeletons emerging from barracks, blinking in daylight, unable to process freedom. Most of Rafael's ensemble is dead by then, transported and gassed, or dead from starvation and disease. But a few survive. The cellist from Vienna. The soprano from Berlin. The elderly violinist from Budapest. They carry Rafael's memory, carry the Requiem's memory, carry the knowledge of what they accomplished together. After liberation, survivors scatter across the world. Some return to destroyed homes, finding nothing, finding emptiness, finding cities where Jews no longer exist. Some emigrate to Palestine, to America, to Australia, rebuilding lives from absolute zero. Some die shortly after liberation, their bodies too damaged to recover, surviving the camps only to die from freedom, from food, from the shock of safety. The survivors who live carry guilt that they survived while better people died, that randomness rather than merit determined who lived and who died, that they did nothing to deserve survival except luck. The Requiem performances are forgotten initially. Theresienstadt's cultural program seems trivial compared to the genocide scale, compared to 6 million dead, compared to the camp's full horror becoming public knowledge. Who cares about concerts when millions were murdered? Who cares about music when children were gassed? The survivors themselves rarely speak about it, feeling that art trivializes atrocity, that discussing cultural activities dishonors the murdered majority who had no culture, no music, no beauty, only death. But slowly, gradually, the story emerges. In the 1960s, researchers begin documenting their Theresienstadt's history, interviewing survivors, collecting testimonies. They learn about Rafael Schächter, about his Requiem, about the impossible achievement of performing Verdi in a death camp. The story spreads through academic circles, then to broader audiences. Books are written. Documentaries are filmed. The Requiem performances become symbol, become legend, become proof of art's power to resist evil, to maintain humanity in inhumane conditions, to create meaning in meaninglessness. In 1991, survivors of Rafael's ensemble are invited to Prague for a commemorative concert. A professional orchestra and chorus will perform Verdi's Requiem, honoring Rafael and the murdered musicians who performed it under impossible conditions. The survivors attend, now elderly, in their 70s and 80s, the same age Rafael would be if he'd survived. They sit in Prague's Rudolfinen concert hall, elegant and beautiful, so different from the freezing attic in Theresienstadt. The orchestra is excellent, the chorus powerful, the execution technically flawless. It sounds nothing like their performances, nothing like the ragged, desperate, dying music they created 50 years ago. But during the Lacrimosa, something breaks inside them. They begin weeping, unable to stop, unable to contain grief postponed for decades. They cry for Rafael, dead in Auschwitz at 35. They cry for their murdered colleagues, for the dozens of musicians who passed through the ensemble and died. They cry for their younger selves, for the trauma they endured, for the impossible things they survived. The music opens wounds never fully healed, exposes scars hidden beneath decades of coping in silence. After the concert, survivors gather, share memories, compare experiences. They realize none of them heard all 7 performances. Each survivor attended different ones, experienced different versions, sang with different ensemble members. But together, their memories reconstruct the complete history, piece by piece, testimony by testimony. They remember Raphael's stubbornness, his refusal to quit, his insistence on beauty despite horror. They remember the cold attic, the brown paper sheet music, the constant churn of performers dying or transported. They remember the final clandestine performance, the night before Raphael's deportation, the truest Requiem Mass ever performed. They establish a memorial fund in Raphael's name, supporting music education, preserving Holocaust memory, ensuring future generations learn this story. They give lectures at schools, at universities, at Holocaust museums. They explain what music meant in their Theresienstadt, how it preserved humanity, how it resisted dehumanization, how it proved that Nazis could kill bodies but not souls, could murder millions but not destroy the human capacity to create beauty. The last survivor, the soprano from Berlin, dies in 2009 at 92. With her death, living memory of Raphael's Requiem ends. No one remains who sang it, who heard it, who experienced it directly. It becomes pure history, documented through testimonies and recordings of interviews, preserved through written accounts and archival research. But the story persists, told and retold, inspiring new generations, demonstrating music's power, proving that art matters even in extremity, especially in extremity. Modern orchestras perform Verdi's Requiem with Raphael's story attached, dedicating performances to him and his murdered musicians. The audiences listen differently, hearing not just Verdi but the echo of those desperate performances in their Theresienstadt, the ghost music played by dying people in a death camp. The Requiem is transformed by this history, becomes not just masterpiece but monument, not just art but testimony. In their Theresienstadt itself, now a memorial site, visitors can see the attic where Raphael rehearsed, the hall where performances occurred. Plaques commemorate him and the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. Educational programs teach children about cultural resistance, about maintaining humanity through art. The story becomes lesson, becomes inspiration, becomes proof that individual actions matter, that choosing beauty over despair is not futile but essential, that music survives longer than tyranny. Rafael Schächter died in a gas chamber at Auschwitz in April 1944. He lived 35 years, conducted 7 performances of Verdi's Requiem under impossible conditions, saved no one, changed nothing about the genocide's course. By conventional measures, his life was tragic, wasted, meaningless. But the music he created, the beauty he maintained, the humanity he preserved in hell, that matters. That means everything. That's why his story endures 70 years after his death, why orchestras still perform the Requiem in his memory, why his name appears in books and films and educational programs. Because Rafael Schächter proved something essential about human nature. We create beauty not because it's practical, not because it's useful, not because it changes political reality. We create beauty because we're human, because creating beauty is what humans do, because art is how we assert meaning in meaningless universe, how we resist despair with hope, how we answer death with life. The Nazis could murder Raphael's body, but they couldn't murder his music, couldn't silence the Requiem, couldn't erase the beauty he created from 75 musicians performing Verdi on brown paper sheet music in a freezing attic while waiting for deportation to death camps. That's the legacy. That's what survives. Not the propaganda films, not the Nazi lies, not the fake beautification or cynical deception. What survives is music, is beauty, is the human spirit refusing to surrender even when surrender seems rational, even when resistance seems futile, even when death is certain and hope is gone. Rafael Schächter and his musicians sang Requiem masses for themselves while dying, creating beauty from horror, making art from genocide, proving that music matters, that culture matters, that humanity persists, that we remain ourselves until the absolute end. And nothing in this world, not even industrial genocide, can destroy that. The music remains. Always. Forever. Eternal.